Hello, I'm Philip Muggleston, and in this series of videos we're covering the predictive capabilities native to SAP HANA. In this video we'll continue our look into association analysis, and in particular the Apriori approach. Now, if you've not already seen the prior video on Apriori, please review that because we're going to be working from that point in this video. So, the Apriori algorithm, as we already saw, let's just browse some of the output, generates us a set of rules. So we have one row per rule in our output table. We can see that one or more products are maybe purchased and other products are then associated with that purchase. So when products 3 and 6 are bought, that's maybe a good indicator that product 39 is also bought. So we did that based on actual individual orders and multi-product orders that happened. What we however want to do this time, make a little change. We're going to make two changes. One change is that we want to simplify the output, and this is why we'll use Apriori Lite. We just want to look at single products as the pre-rule and single products as the post-rule. So a simpler, more straightforward approach. So for that we can use Apriori Lite. What we also might want to do is sample, not use all of the source data, but just sample the source data. And the other thing, this case we were looking at individual orders. And we were looking at the products bought during those orders or transactions. However, what we might also want to do is to look at things that the customers have bought, multiple products the customer has bought over the life cycle of the customer. So not necessarily the same day, the same time, but maybe over the last year, or just the customers bought these different products over time. So we're going to change our a priori to take that second example. Now, if we go back to the actual source data that we were looking at, here we can see we've got the order ID column, the product ID, that's what we were already using, but we've also got a customer ID column. So this time, instead of just looking at products sold per order, we're going to look at actually the products sold for each customer overall. So we'll be using customer ID instead of order ID. Now, as always, I have some code that's already been set up to save us a bit of time. This is the same code we were using. This is actually the Apriori code. However, we're now going to make a few little changes to it to reflect the changes we want to make. Now, first thing, we were going to use the customer ID here as the type. So let's change order ID into customer ID for our table type. And in fact, in this case, as the type already exists, we just need to drop the type. So we're going to drop the existing type. So let's just run that, and we must run it on sys_AFL as always. Okay, and now having done that, we also need to change the procedure that we're working on. So in fact, it was called PAL_AP last time. So maybe this time we'll call it PAL_AP_L for Lite. And the important thing, and this is what you'll find in the documentation, this is where we're going to call the Lite a priori rule. And again, the documentation gives you that information, what value you need to put here, what the input and output tables would be. So let's now run this and create the PAL_AP_L procedure. That's now been done. Now, the second thing we need to also do is update our view to make sure that from our source data we're reading the customer ID and not the order ID. So again, that view already exists from before, so we just need to drop it. So let's drop view and recreate it. This time we're working in our application schema, so the PAL schema. Okay, now that's been refreshed, and everything else basically stays the same for the time being. The final thing we need to do is simply update the name of the procedure we're going to call, because we're having Apriori and Apriori Lite coexisting, so we call that Apriori_L for our Lite version. So this time we're going to call Apriori Lite. Again, working it in your application schema, which for us is PAL, and maybe we'll just reset some of these values. We don't need to look at PMML this time, so let's update parameter table, and we need to call the procedure, of course emptying out the output tables before we do that. So the procedure has now run, and if we go and look at our Apriori rules table, the results, let's now preview that. What we can see is that in our list, we won't see all of them, but we're only seeing one specific product on the left and one specific product on the right. And actually, compared to looking at transactions, the support values seem to be actually quite a lot higher. We're getting some very high support values if we look at the largest ones first. So actually some quite significant support there. So we've got just the pre and post rule. Now why to do this? Well, if you only need looking at one-to-one product, one in, one out, then it's going to be much faster if you run that Apriori Lite functionality and that Apriori Lite capability. And again, we can review the same information on the view that we created. So if we maybe want to visualize that in a tag cloud, we can look at the Apriori rules. And let's preview that. Again, go back to analysis. We're only seeing one-to-one rules. If we now put the rules axis and confidence as a value, change it to a tag cloud, add the lift. You can see in this example what's particularly changed is we've only got one product to one. We're just going from relationships between single individual products. So it's a light version of running the Apriori analysis. Now, one other thing that Apriori allows us to do, and Apriori Lite in particular, is to filter or to sample the input data. So one of the parameters we can set here is what's known as the optimization type. And the optimization type allows us to choose what percentage of the data to use, or in fact, use all of the data. So we've already set it to say use all the data. It was set at 0. However, if we were to update, what we need to do is maybe take one of these examples and update our table. So we want to set the integer value to 1. And we also need to just set that to, we can copy it and paste it, it'll be easier. So optimization type, we're setting the integer value to 1, but we also, as we're saying we want to optimize it, we need to say what percentage of data we will take. So what we can do here is update the double args value, and maybe we'll set it to 0.7. So effectively say use 70% of the data that we have. So let's update our parameter table. Okay, and this is actually one of the rare cases where we use more than one of the values to define a parameter, because actually there's two pieces of information we're giving. So if we actually just have a quick look at our parameter table, we can see we've got the optimization type. We've set it to 1 to use the optimization, and it's 0.7 is the percentage that we want it to use. Okay, so go back to the code having done that, and then we simply can rerun it. So again, we empty the output tables and rerun it. It will run a bit faster because we're using less data, and so it's run. And if we again go back to the rules view and maybe refresh that, you can see we've maybe got some different rules, and that's based effectively on the information that we gave it. So we can actually automatically sample the source data we're leading into this. Now actually there are many more capabilities available with Apriori and Apriori Lite, but hopefully that's provided quite a nice overview. So association analysis is very useful for analyzing product purchases in retail, for doing basket analysis, so looking at items frequently bought together at the same time, or maybe as we just did there, looking at items that customers bought maybe over a period of time. So it's a great way to work out cross-selling recommendations, and it's also a great way to maybe identify fraud for when maybe people are not following the common rules.